this is going to be the interview for quarter, uh, the quarter for the task, uh, and this is going to be the interview for differences in culture. And we have,
Um, Hajimimashite, Conceptivine Marby, des, Junana sai des, Watashi wa Nihon karakimashita, Yoroshiku onegaishimasu.
mm. So what differs your cultures? What differs your culture from others?
Japan is a nation consisting of more than 6,000 islands. This is staggering number of islands along with its temperate climate and distinct four seasons, combined to make a country varied and interesting local cultures. And also what makes Japan different from other countries is that Japanese culture is more formal than American culture. Social hierarchy is important in Japan. Japan's culture is collectivist and America's is individualistic. Even in eating public can be considered impolite. Japan's architecture, art, traditions, crafts, also its worldwide known pop culture, including manga, anime, and video games, is something that definitely only Japan can offer. No other country contains the same characteristics.
Impressive. So it seems that Japan is one of the most polite and well mannered countries with
Yes.
very interesting culture. Okay, so let's have question number two. When did your culture first suffice?
During its classical period, Japan was highly influenced by Chinese culture. The influence of Buddhism, Confucianism, and other elements of Chinese culture had profound impact on the development of Chinese culture. Japan's indigenous culture originates primarily from the Yayoi people who settled in Japan between 1000 BCE and 300 CE.
Hmm. So it seems that the culture has started very early, uh, very early on in its foundations. So the third question: when people from other countries think about your culture, what do they usually think of?
Based on what I heard, they think the Japanese are intelligent, cultured, well mannered, gentle, and reserved people. Unfortunately, Japanese sometimes can be bit hard to understand because there are a lot of Japanese that I experience have a bit hard time to be more open about their own feelings and thoughts. Some said that culture is often seen as quirky at yet sophisticated on the same time. Japanese technology is very advanced, often being looked up by many people, and the food is often healthy and fresh, which can explain why Japanese have longest life expectancy. That's of course depends on the country and individual. And any answer would be generalization. And the other adjectives that I heard most is that Japanese are diligent, efficient, hardworking, polite, and non-confrontational.
Thank you for giving your insight on uh, the thoughts of other people's the thought of other people's opinions on your culture. And the last question is going to be, what do you think is interesting about your culture?
Honestly, there's so many interesting things in Japan, but I can say that Japan's unique culture is fascinating blend of the old and new with deeply rooted customs and continuously evolving lifestyle. Japan is both proudly traditional and ultra modern. This is a nation that celebrates its strong cultural identity from food and everyday etiquette to art and education. The culture and traditions of Japan are unique because of its island nation, geography, as well as its isolation from the outside world during the Tokugawa shogunate regime. Borrowed ideas from other countries are infused with existing customs to become something distinctly Japanese.
Mm-hmm. Very wonderful.
Thank you.
I have my own opinions that the Japanese culture is very exquisite. It's filled with rich with rich connections towards history, and most of it are still present to this day. Thank you, Kausef
Thank you
Aubrey,
so much.
for presenting and allowing yourself to be interviewed for today's interview.
Thank you for having me, sir.
This is going to be the second interview for the first quarter of English, and it will be about cultural diversity. Uh, Jervy Valerin will going to be is going to be representing China. Hello, welcome.
你好，我是 Villarin，我来自
Mm, thank you. So we have four questions, and uh, will you be okay to answer four of them?
Yes.
Okay. So, what differs your culture from others?
Chinese culture is diverse and unique, yet harmoniously blended, an invaluable asset to the world. Our China Culture Guide contains information divided into traditions, heritage, arts, festivals, language, and symbols.
Hmm. Uh, that is very diverse. And two, when did your culture first suffice?
1600 to 221 BC, Chinese civilization began along the Yellow River in the Shang era and spread from there when Bronze Age culture reached its peak. Then traditional Chinese philosophies such as Confucianism
Was it?
and Daoism developed in the feudal Zhou era as China expanded in territory and population.
Hmm. It seems that your culture started very early, and
Yes.
when people from other countries think about your culture, what do they usually think of?
Many people from other countries will think about the similarities and difference between our culture and their culture because Chinese culture includes customs and tradition, music, dances, painting, language, cuisine, clothing, and applied art. The Chinese written language, one of the world's ancient languages, is unique in its own way, since even now the Chinese write with the help of the same alphabet that was used 5,000 years ago.
Oh, your alphabet is very old. I see, and also you are right about people comparing your culture to others. Uh, Number four, what do you think is interesting in your culture?
The interesting part of the Chinese culture is that China is influenced deeply by Confucianism. Confucius is revered for teaching doctrines key to Chinese culture. Even over 2,500 years on, Confucian beliefs are still ingrained in mainstream ethics and religion, and this can be seen as you travel throughout China.
2,500 years. That's a lot.
Yes.
Um, Thank you, Jervy Valerin, for coming to the interview. Uh, this is going to be the second section for the the interview. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, thank you.
This is going to be the third and last interview for the English Cultural Diversity. Introducing Sebastian Carl Binongo, representing India. Hello, welcome.
Hello, good day.
Uh, so I have four questions for you to answer. Are you willing to answer all of them?
Yes, yes, I'm
Okay,
cool with that.
okay. Uh, Number one, what differs your culture from others?
India's culture differs in terms in religion because India culture has a variety of religions like Hinduism, Islam, Sikhism, Christianity, and etc. While in Western culture, the people mostly belong to Christianity. In
Mm-hmm.
Indian culture, joint families are common. However, nuclear families are also there.
Mm-hmm. Uh, when did your culture first suffice?
Um, our, our culture, our civilization in India began about 4,500 years ago. Many sources describe it as Sapatrama Sanskrati Vishwavara.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Uh, when people from other countries think about your culture, what do they usually think of?
Mm, the some people usually think that most of Indians are smell bad and but
Dirty.
yeah, but uh we have we are famous for our monuments. We have lots of monuments here in our in India's country. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So the last question is, what do you think is interesting about your culture?
India is the birthplace of four major religions. India's intermingling of its diverse culture and religion formulates its uniqueness and charming soul. The country is the epicenter of many of the world's religions, and Jainism, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Sikhism all call India their birthplace.
Mm-hmm. Uh,
So the interesting in our culture is about our religions.
mm. Thank you,
Yeah.
Sebastian Carl Binongo, for representing India. Thank you for coming
Thank you
into
for
the
having me
interview.
also.
Thank you. Uh,
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
So, good day everyone. I'm Ian James Pipasnilao and I will explain the interview of the three countries. So, in the interview, they introduce themselves on what country they are. And there are four questions that the interviewer asked to them. So, the first one is what differs your culture from other. And the second one is when did you start cultivating your culture? Third one is when people from countries think about your culture, do they usually think of it? So the lastly is what do you think is interesting in your culture? So the first one is he asked on what differs your culture from others. So they answered that their culture were diverse and unique, and some other culture is more term formal than American culture. So the next one question, when did they start cultivating their culture? So they answered that it based on how they originates their indigenous culture, and some are began from civilization on their era. So the third one is so when people from other countries think about your culture on what do they usually think. So many people from other country would think about their similarities and difference between their culture. So in their culture had some customs and traditions, and other some countries that their cultured, well-mannered and reserved people. So lastly is the interesting about their culture is that their tradition were unique and their nation well elaborates its strong cultural identity, and some of their culture were influenced deeply by Confucianism that believes mainstream ethics and religions. So that's all. I hope you have learned from this video. Thank you.